minimalism is not a new idea. You can go back to the Stoics. You can go back to every major world religion, whether it's Hinduism or Christianity or Sufi Islam. And what you realize pretty quickly is like, they're often talking about simplifying, getting rid of the excess. But what is new is this problem of consumerism.
You're listening to the Minimalist Podcast with Joshua Fields Milburn and TK Coleman.
Thank you, Malabama. Hello, everybody. Today on the show, what a treat we have for you. We are joined by Marcus Collins, an award-winning marketer with one foot in the world of practice. He served as the Chief Strategy Officer at Wieden and Kennedy, and he also has one foot in the world of academia. He's the marketing professor at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. He's also the author of a new book, which is called For the Culture, The Power Behind What We Buy, What We Do, and Who We Want to Be. Coming up on this free public minimal episode, a caller has a question about wanting a marketing job that does not align with her values. We're going to talk a lot about marketing and values and so much more. Then we've got our lightning round segment, a FAM's question, and a listener tip for you. You can check out the full 2-hour Maximal edition of episode 425, where we answer 5 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because sing along at home, y'all. Advertisements suck. Let's start with our callers. If you got a question or a comment for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice recording to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Olivia.
Hello, I'm Olivia from London, and I'm a Patreon subscriber. So my question is about myself being a minimalist, or close to it, kind of getting there, but also wanting to pursue a job in digital marketing. So how do you deal with wanting a job that gives you more creativity than a more standard corporate role, yet at the same time dealing with confliction because of the pernicious forces of marketing that we all know about, and also feeling like a bad person wanting to work in it just because of the way the industry works, how intense it is? I enjoy marketing when it's for items I want, but do believe it feeds into consumerism. How do I move past advertising sucks motto, but enjoy making money from it, even if I myself am a minimalist? Anyway, thank you so much, guys.
Marcus, I'm not sure if you identify with this question, but sometimes, as a person who's worked in marketing, I worked in marketing for a long time as well. And I think sometimes we have to differentiate marketing from advertising. Advertising can be a subset of marketing, but at times, you might have to market something that doesn't align with your values necessarily. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think that your delineation is the right one to make. Marketing is the act of going to market, right? We take our products, product goods, product services, and we bring them to market, to the people. And we do that through different means, through the products that we put in the world, the price that we assign to it, the means by which we get it to people, what we call placement, and promotion, which is advertising. And the idea is that we use these 4 different levers rather to bring products to people. Now, as a marketer, especially on the advertising side, we're in the service-based business. So in some cases, depending on where you sit in the organization, you don't have the autonomy to say, I'm not going to work on that client. We're going to take that client, not this one. So you find yourself working on things you don't necessarily love. I feel like I've been fortunate enough in my career that I've had some discretion in that, like, I don't believe in this category. I don't believe in this brand or believe in this product. And therefore, I'm not going to work in it. My team is going to. I'm not going to touch it because it's out of line with my ideology. But by and large, in this industry, it's really tough if you're going to be on the advertising side because, clients pay the bills.
Yeah, I think that's right. TK, I'm thinking about taking a job that doesn't align with your values. That often becomes a problem because you have like a couple options. The first option is you could take that job and be miserable because it doesn't align with your values. Or you could change the job and identify a job that maybe does align more closely to your values. or you can simply say, I'm going to change my values. And that one's a bit more difficult, but it is possible to change what you value over time. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are about Olivia's question.
I think it's important to make a distinction between two kinds of belief when we make statements like, I don't believe in this product. The first kind of belief is, I lack excitement about the product. It just doesn't move me. I don't think there's anything unethical about selling it or using it, but it's just not my thing. And in the course of life, we'll all be involved in the process of selling things that we ourselves don't need. The other kind of belief is to say that it would be a violation of my ethical standards to endorse this or support this in any way. If you're dealing with that second kind of belief, you have no choice but to get out, because you can't just think about what you make when you do something, but who you are in the process of becoming by virtue of your doing it. And if you're becoming someone that you don't want to be by virtue of selling a product, the best time to get out is as soon as you can. But I would encourage everyone to not conflate, hey, this doesn't get me really excited, with selling your soul. There are lots of things that we can do to make money in an honest way by using our gifts and talents that may not be exciting. I can cut your grass and make some cash. That's not my passion in life, but it's also not a violation of my core self to do that.
I always think about it this way, and I agree with you 1,000%. I always think about it this way, is that you should find yourself in company with people who see the world the way you do. And collectively, they will decide based on your shared beliefs, whether this is the kind of client we want, these are the kind of products that we support, because we are driven by something far greater than just the making of things. Yeah. That's if you're in advertising. If you are a marketer, not just work in the marketing department of a company, you can say, I don't believe in them, so I'm out. If you're in the advertising agency, it's a little bit harder because you have multiple clients. And if you aren't in the decision-making seat, then it becomes a real big challenge. But I find it much more advantageous to say, this is how I see the world. Who sees the world the way I do? That kind of company, I'm going to work with them. And that way, I'm entrusting them that I'm joining this company not because of the brand, not because of what it looks like on my resume, what the 401k is, what the benefits, the perks are, but I'm here because we see the world similarly, and together we are manifesting that core belief in our work. We just so happen to put products in the world.
What's interesting about that way of putting it is that it not only increases the probability that you will work with and for people whose values align with yours, but it also makes you more marketable in the way that you present yourself. When you're at a job interview or you're trying to win a position, you never want to present yourself as any job will do. I just want to work at this company because I saw an opening and I need a job. You always want to be able to tell the people you're looking to work with something about why they fire you up. Here's what I love about your mission. When I did my research before this interview on this company, here's what I love about the way you serve your customers. And here's a role I can envision myself playing in that. It's a way of being honest. Like, these are my values. So if there's some conflict there, let me know. But it also makes you look like I'm interested in you because of you. It's like going on a first date. You don't want to say, hey, I came out because anyone will do and I'm lonely. I came out because I'm interested in you.
Marcus, I think what I hear TK talking about here is doing something that aligns with your values. And it's easy for us to walk away from something that is so far away from our values, right? Like, if I go to apply for a marketing job at a company that sells statues of Chairman Mao and why he's the best chairman of all time, it'd be easy for me to look at that and say, oh, wow, that actually doesn't align with my values at all. But for something else that is societally accepted, going to go work for, say, Coca-Cola, which we know is not a health food, but also if it doesn't align with my values, I'm going to feel this sense of discontent all along the way. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, there's a cognitive dissonance that exists there, and that sucks. I mean, you spend your whole working time there not being who you are. And the idea, not to sound like Karl Marx, but the idea is that the work I do should bring joy. Right? It should be reflective of who I am, not this transactional thing that I'm a part of. And I guess the meta text of all this is that what we're talking about is exactly what I tell brands about how they should approach how they put themselves in the world, i.e. this, that people should start with inventory. What do I believe? Not the polar things, like I'm anti-terrorism. Great. Hopefully you are.
Congratulations. I'm so glad you took that stand.
It's so brave of you. But no, it's these nuanced things about how I see the world. And the notion then is that you should go to a company starting with, I believe this. And I see that you do too. And I want to do X, Y, and Z work with you all because I feel like we could do great things together because we see the world similarly. I think brands, the most powerful brands, start that way too. We see the world this way. And we're going to target the people who see the world the way we do. And collectively, we'll build something greater than just this exchange. So it starts with first taking inventory on us. So Olivia, as she's thinking about, I like marketing, I go, great, cool. That's the functional thing. What do you believe? How do you see the world? And once you identify how you see the world, you say, okay, who are the people out there who see the world the way I do? Those are the kind of companies I want to work for. I want to do marketing there. But it starts with a shared ideology. I think that that's how communities are established, based on shared belief, a shared way of seeing the world.
One fear that comes up is sometimes we feel like we check all the boxes and do all the right things to get the position, but maybe a few months in, we're comfortable, we've let our hair down, but then something comes up. We're in the room and someone says, this is the client we're working for, this is the project we're doing next, and you see something in that conflicts with your values. What do you do in a moment like that?
Well, that's what belief is meant to do. It becomes a rubric that if someone says, hey, we're going to work with this client, we can raise our hand and say, but this client believes this and we believe that. So there is an incongruence there. So now it's not an attack on the person. It's not even putting yourself in a compromising scenario. It's just stating the facts that we believe this, right? This is how we see the world. Then why are we working with this client? Question mark.
And that's a great positive viewpoint, as opposed to saying, this person's awful, let's tear them down, let's drag them through the town square. It's saying, hey, they believe something different from us, and let's put that on the table and let's have a discussion around that.
That's right. And in the discourse of that challenge, if people are revealing that they actually don't believe what they say they believe, now you go, oh, these aren't my people.
So good.
Let's take a step back real quick and let's talk about marketing. I mean, you wrote a whole book about this and what goes into what we buy. And what's fascinating about it is I think quite often there's this term mimetic belief, and I think mimetic desire is something else that is there as well. It's just like what's going on behind our purchases. And when we really scrutinize it, and obviously you understand this, I was hoping you could talk to our audience about what is going on behind what we buy.
I mean, there's a lot there. And what the literature tells us is that our consumption behavior is not as functional as we believe, right? So actually, let's do this. So if we go back in time, little known fact, for centuries, the global GDP was zero. That means we weren't entering into any exchange, hardly any. If it was very, very minimal. And that was until 16th century Queen Elizabeth had the bright idea that she would use consumption as a means of aggrandizement, as a means of power. And the notion was this: royalty have everything, nobility have a little less, peasants have nothing. And the notion is that if you were nobility, you were therefore compelled to consume to maintain your status in the social hierarchy. And peasants will look up the ladder, realizing that consumption was the only way up. It was a means of control, a means of power. And that was the case for 2 centuries until we saw a little bit of economic activity happening in the 18th century in Northern Europe, where companies started to make a little bit more money. So they paid their employees a little bit more money. And those employees went and spent more money. So more companies made more money. They started to pay their employees more money, more. We get this cycle of consumption. Industrial revolution happens at the end of the century. Kaboom. Consumption all over the place. So what is this telling us? What's the point of all this? Is that from the very existence of consumption at scale, it had nothing to do with functionality, everything to do with social and psychological impulses. We buy not because of what things are, but because of who we are and who we want to be. We want to signal who we are in the social hierarchy. And as doing such, it becomes a way for us to peacock our desired identity so that we can connect with people who are like ourselves. Being social animals by nature, as Aristotle puts it, our consumption becomes a way by which we make our cultural subscription material. And by doing so, it demarcates who we are in this world and who are people like ourselves.
That's so spot on. I think what happens here is we realize that many of our consumption choices aren't our consumption choices. I didn't decide this. My peer group decided it. My culture decided it. I'm for the culture, right? But also my society, or maybe it's my church group, or maybe it's the people in my neighborhood, or maybe it's I like this one thing and therefore I must like these 10 other things in order to complete what I like. It makes me a whole person. And that is really the birth of consumerism. Minimalism is not a new idea. You can go back to the Stoics. You can go back to every major world religion, whether it's Hinduism or Christianity or Sufi Islam. And what you realize pretty quickly is like, they're often talking about simplifying, getting rid of the excess. But what is new is this problem of consumerism. There's nothing inherently wrong with consumption. We all need to consume some things. But the ideology of consumerism is you won't be complete until you consume. And I think that's really the problem that we run up against.
1,000%. I mean, what I like about the way you frame that is that it gets to what this idea of cultural consumption is all about, right? Our identities, who we are, is how we demarcate our place in the world, right? In all its complexities, these multi-hyphenates that we use to describe ourselves, whether it's an individual referent, I'm a professor, a group referent, I'm in a fraternity called Phi Beta Sigma, or an abstract referent, I'm a father of 2 little girls. This is the way that I self-identify. And because of who I am, I see the world a certain way. If I'm a minimalist, I have a certain set of beliefs, right? And those beliefs are based on my identity. That's why for some, a cow is leather, for others, it's a deity, and for some, it's dinner. Which one is it? It's all those things, depending on how you self-identify. So because of who I am, I see the world a certain way. And because I see the world a certain way, I navigate the world a certain way. For instance, I'm a Collins, right? We believe family and church come first. So Sunday mornings, I'm in the church sanctuary. Or I get a passive-aggressive call from my mother that afternoon. How was your morning, Marcus? Until she gets down, right? And it's because... It's not, I didn't sign any stone tablets in blood saying I'm going to go to church on Sundays, but I do that because that's what people like me do. You know that saying in philosophy, I think, therefore I am. In this case, it's I am, therefore I do. I am A, therefore I. And this idea is all anchored in identity, right? Which Alex is more excited about running or more committed to running? Alex who likes to run or Alex who identifies as a runner? The one who identifies as a runner, that's the Alex that gets up in the morning, even though she or he or they are tired and it's raining and it's cold and they don't want to do it, but they do it because that's just what people like them do. And then they express themselves through some cultural production, music, art, literature, film, television, and the like. And the alchemy of these things make up our culture. And consumption, by its very nature, becomes an act of culture. It's a cultural act. Right? Where I go to school, if I go to school, who I marry, if I marry, how I style myself, how I style my hair, if you have it, where you vacation, what you eat, how you bury the dead, if you bury the dead. All these things are byproducts of our cultural subscription. Consumption becomes an outward expression of inward beliefs. So the notion of acquiring things all depends on your worldview.
And I think the worldview can become stifled when we radically narrow or limit the definition of a thing. And I think that's where someone like Olivia is right now, where she's like, how can I be a minimalist and a marketer? Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm a minimalist and a marketer. We market this podcast. We market our books. We promote things that we believe in. We don't do any advertisements. And that's not a moral or ethical stance. I just don't like them. I think it's kind of gross. And I don't like listening to other podcasts that have advertisements. I don't like turning on a YouTube video that has advertisement pre-roll. And so I've just opted out of that. Now, part of that means I'm opting out of a certain amount of money as well, a lot of money. And Olivia, that might also be true for you. Yes, you can go work for the big marketing agency that's going to make you do a bunch of things that you don't want to do, but you're going to get that bag, right? But you know what? You're going to show up every day and you're going to take the bag, but you're not going to feel really great about it. And the opposite is maybe you can show up somewhere where the bag is much smaller or a little bit smaller, but you feel fulfilled and paid in all of these other ways.
You know, Lauryn Hill said it best. How are you going to win if you ain't right within? Like you have to know who you are, how you see the world, what you believe to make the decisions that are congruent with it. If not, if you don't know where you're going, all roads will lead you there. Right. So if you're not very clear on what I believe, on what I'm willing to compromise, what I'm convicted about, then you find yourself constantly at odds with yourself. And that's just a terrible way to be.
And so I think what quite often, and TK has really helped me with this, expanding the idea of what it means to be a minimalist or a marketer or whatever that identity that you've picked up is. What does this identity say about me? Because we recognize that isn't my real self. That isn't who I am. My identity is a false self, but I get to construct that identity so that it meets my desires as opposed to meeting the desires of everyone else.
That's right. There will always be people who claim to see a contradiction between who you claim to be and what they observe you doing. Hey, you laughed. How could you be a Christian? You just bought a $5 cup of coffee. How could you be a minimalist? You went to that school. How could you be Black? You said that. You cried. How could you be a man? And in those moments, there is an opportunity for us to affirm that part of what it means to be a thing is to contribute to the ever-evolving understanding of what it means to be that thing, that I get to help define what it means to be a man. I get to help define what it means to be Black, what it means to be an X or a Y. And so when we're looking at opportunities and we're experiencing this fear, like, oh my gosh, like, can I be an X and work in the entertainment industry? Can I be a Y and work in the restaurant industry? We have to not only think about those environments and their ability to influence us, but also about our own character and our ability to influence those environments. And I would say here, with respect to this question, is trust the fact that you have the power to also change the culture and to positively affect people's understanding of what it means to be a marketer. It's kind of like the whole used car salesman stereotype. When I say used car salesman, everybody thinks, oh, someone who's slimy, someone who's going to exploit me or what have you. And that's because someone somewhere experienced a used car salesman that was that way. They wrote about it, joked about it, and it became a trope. Well, you can be the used car salesman. That's honest. And that's funny, and that's charming, and that takes care of people, and you can create a new meme, a new trope, a new understanding. We always have that power.
Can I add to that real quick? Because I think what's fascinating about that is in that market, you actually have much more ability to stand out, right? Because if someone says, what do you do? And you say, I'm a used car salesman, at first they're going to be like, oh, and now all of a sudden they've set the bar so low for you. And if you provide outstanding customer experience and a wonderful customer service, and you have made yourself stand out just from the pack of other people who have formed that identity for our society, because used car salesman isn't inherently evil or bad. It just happens to be a lot of us have dealt with someone who either ripped us off or didn't care the way that we want them to care about us.
I mean, what we're dancing around, I think, is just so important to underscore is the idea of meaning. And that meaning in and of itself, it's inherently meaningless. That is, everything that we look that's around us, everything that we see that right now has no inherent meaning. We have given it meaning through negotiation, right? That's what Ferdinand de Saussure, one of the founding fathers of semiotics, talks about. Like, there's nothing has inherent meaning. Take the color red, right? Red, some will say, is a color. Well, it's a wavelength that makes your eyes see a color. But if you're driving through an intersection and you see a red light, red means stop. Now, does red inherently mean stop? No. We have negotiated that red means stop. And as a result, we behave accordingly. Just like green means go and yellow means hurry up. Right? So the idea there is that because things don't inherently have meaning, then we, through the discourse, we rework meaning. And that's actually what culture is. Culture is a realized meaning-making system. It's the way by which we see the world and translate it based on the beliefs and ideologies that we hold. So as a result, as we talk about marketing, and rather one should be a marketer, does it rub up against my ideologies and the intersectionality of my identity? I'm a minimalist and I'm a marketer. Those things don't coexist. Then maybe we need to be interrogating what it means to be a marketer, and through the discourse shifting that. Because I would argue in many ways, like, you say you hate advertising. I hate traditional advertising too. I think traditional advertising blows. Yeah. Why? Because it's disruptive. It's never about me. It's about moving me. It's about influencing me. It's about pushing me, as opposed to seeing the world through my lenses, helping me, right? And the advertising that does that, we actually go tell other people about it. not because of what it is, but because of who we are. And the marketers who do this well, we go, yes, thank you, more, please. The Patagonias of the world, yes, thank you, more, please. And the beautiful part about it is that not only are there marketing activities helping people, but they have a clear point of view. They believe in minimalizing, reducing our invasiveness on the planet. And by wearing this jacket, I communicate something about my identity. And the marketing that the brand takes on not only acts as a way to inform me about their products, they actually become cultural production because I share it with people as a way of expressing my identity. And therefore, I would say that the best advertising isn't advertising at all. The best advertising become objects, communicative objects that help me peacock who I am in the world and find people who are just like me.
So help me maybe steel man this for our audience or for our podcast. I don't anticipate ever doing ads on the Minimalist podcast, but in what scenario would something like that make sense? What stars would need to align so that we felt good about it and an audience would feel good about it?
Well, I don't think that you would do traditional advertising at all. I think the B-roll, we're back to after this announcement, and then Simply Safe. Like I don't think that just feels antithetical to who you are. But I think what you're doing is what I talk about in the book. That instead of pushing value propositions, instead preach the gospel. And in preaching the gospel, people go, "Yes, finally someone said it." And they'll say, "Hey, Mallory, you need to check out this podcast. It's so good. It's exactly what you and I were just talking about." And then people become the vehicle by which the product gets to the market and reverberates into the population. So, in many ways, I say, keep doing what you're doing because the actions that you take are aligned with your belief system. And as a result, you feel believable. It feels real. The word of the year, according to Merriam-Webster, is authentic. Because there's such little authenticity. But when we see brands walk the talk, we go, yeah, man. Even if you don't agree with them, you go they're just doing their thing, man. At least, they're consistent. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But when it's not, you go, ugh, we're repulsed by things that seem inauthentic.
And by the way, it's easy for us to sniff that out as well. The manufactured authenticity is the antithesis of authenticity.
That's right.
It is not authentic at all. And it's like looking at some 2D cardboard cutout of a thing and you know that it's not real. And we all know that it's not real. When I'm watching an NBA game and then all of a sudden the commercials come on that are just atrocious. Some of them are really, really bad. Now they're earworms, they're catchy, and so maybe they're meant to be bad in some respect. But also, I see those and I'm not like, oh, that Burger King commercial is a beacon of authenticity.
Yeah.
That's not what they're trying to do. And I think the way to identify authenticity in yourself, and I'll bring this back to Olivia, is understand what your values are. And Olivia, I'd encourage you to go to theminimalists.com/V. There's a free download there. It's a values worksheet. It helps you identify, we identified 4 different types of values. It's kind of like building a house. You have a foundation. So everyone has similar foundational values. And you have a structure that's important. What are your structural values? Then you have surface values, like superficially, I really like these types of clothes or this type of car or whatever, this type of art, superficial or the surface values. But then I think where we really get into trouble is this 4th category we call imaginary values. This is something we think we value, but then we don't actually value. It's like putting a giant fence around a house without a gate. It actually keeps us from the things we value. And if we're not clear on what our values are, what's going to happen? Corporations and marketers are going to hand us our values and say, here's what you're supposed to do. Here's who you are supposed to be. So Olivia, theminimalists.com/V, head on over there to better understand your values. We've got an essay over there that explains all of those different values as well. Alabama, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round where we answer your questions from TikTok.
Yes, indeed. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, also on Instagram, Facebook, X, and Threads. We are at The Minimalists on all of those platforms. Now, during the lightning round, we each have 60 seconds to answer your question with a short, shareable, less than 140-character response. We call them minimal maxims, and we put them in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast. By the way, We'll also send you those minimal maxims right to your email inbox every Monday whenever our new episodes come out. All you have to do is sign up for our email list over at theminimalists.email. We'll never send you junk or spam or advertisements, but we'll start your week off with a bit of simplicity. We'll send you the show notes to this podcast, as well as 7 or 8 or 10 minimal maxims for the week. Today's question is from LMAG.
Nowadays, it seems like we spend too much time consuming media and not enough time reading, progressing, and evolving. Have we become superficial because we are being influenced by everyone trying to sell us something and buy our attention?
TK, what say you?
I think you've got a point. I think we've conquered boredom, but at the expense of connection. We're more stimulated than ever before. And yet we're wrestling with these unprecedented bouts of anxiety, loneliness, and depression. We're more entertained, but we're less engaged. And I don't think the solution lies in the direction of taking all of our devices and smashing them to the ground like iconoclasts. But we have to come back to a remembrance of the fact that it's not our tools that give our lives meaning. It's us that give meaning to our tools. And so we always have to be asking ourselves questions like, am I truly growing, or am I just counting metrics? Am I truly connecting, or am I just logging on? Am I truly listening, or am I just hitting the play button and letting the audiobook go? Am I truly reading and hearing and feeling, or am I just consuming content? Am I truly connecting with people? And I think that's the solution is in that direction.
I love that minimal maxim. Because what you're really talking about here is, yes, we've conquered boredom in one way because we're more excited, more stimulated than ever. But the cost is the connection with others, but also connection with self. Because in a weird way, we haven't conquered boredom. We're more stimulated, but it amplifies our boredom. It's so much easier to be bored today than it was 10 years ago, 100 years ago. 200 years ago, boredom existed, right? But we didn't have all of these options to overstimulate ourselves. What happens? We're walking around like we're fully caffeinated on digital stimuli. And you see it, go to any busy downtown, and it's just faces lost in glowing screens. Now, I'm not pathologizing that. I use glowing screens all the time. But the question is, at some point, when are they using me? And that brings me to another question. What's the price of our progress? Yes, we're progressing a lot, but at what cost? Maybe it's too expensive. Now, I'm not against progress. I think we've progressed in a bunch of ways that are great for the human experience, in ways that are more entertaining than ever. We've made our lives convenient and easier so we can focus on deeper, more existential problems in our lives. And yet we continue to stimulate ourselves and ignore those problems. And so what I'd say is the price of progress is expensive. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not worth it, but we're fooling ourselves if we think progress is just always a good thing. To get back to LMAG's question directly, we're not doing enough reading, progressing, and evolving. And in fact, when the question itself is about being superficial, have we become superficial because we are being influenced by everyone trying to sell us something? And I would say, yeah, I think we've by and large become more superficial. Now, you get to decide whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. Something is superficial, that is not bad. Imagine if I get into a car accident and it's just the bumper has fallen off of my car and I take it in to get it fixed and I need a new bumper, and also it needs to be painted. And I say, wait, why are you going to paint it? That's just superficial. The person at the mechanic shop will look at me like, yeah, that is superficial. That's the point. It's not going to keep your car from running. And that is often the problem. If we take our car into the shop because the transmission is shot and the mechanic tries to paint my car instead, well, yeah, that's sacrificing the thing that actually needs to be done to repair the vehicle for something superficial. But also, I think we lose ourselves when we pretend that something is superficial and therefore it is bad. It gets back to that conversation about the values worksheet. Understanding what some of your values are. I don't want to forsake my foundation of my house or my foundational values for my surface level values. It doesn't mean they're not important to me. It just means they're not as important as having that foundation on the house.
Yeah, imagine a society where no one slept because everyone saw sleep as a sign of weakness, right? And your social status lowered if you were ever caught nodding off. And we found a way scientifically to put together all the different stimulants we have, and we create the anti-sleep stimulant. And so whenever you get sleepy, you just shoot yourself up with this anti-sleep stimulant, and it gives you a boost of energy for a little while.
He's describing meth, by the way.
And imagine if that's what we did every time we felt sleepy. We would stay awake longer. We would probably get more done, at least quantitatively, definitely not qualitatively. But over time, we would eventually collapse and we'd be done. And the fundamental problem is that we have treated sleep as if it's an illness to be cured, when it's really an indication of the body needing something that is valuable and a part of who we are as human beings. I think that's an analogy for what happens to a society when we treat boredom as an illness to be cured, rather than an indicator of something that our humanity needs. When we feel bored, that's not something to despise. That's not a sickness. That is a sign that I am a human being. I am multidimensional, and I need to be engaged, not necessarily stimulated, not necessarily entertained, not necessarily busy, but I need to be engaged with myself and connected with others in a way that goes beyond where I'm at and what I'm doing right now. And when we can be present with that boredom and listen to it and learn from it, that boredom can contribute to our aliveness. But when we treat it like it's a problem, we say, I'm bored, give me some stimulation. And we cope with it. We create the appearance of having conquered it. But just like the person who never goes to sleep and shoots themselves up with the anti-sleep stimulant, we're just taking a quicker march towards our own death.
Yeah. I got another question for you, but first, real quick, for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalist. How exciting is this, TK Coleman? We're calling it the Everything Tour. The minimalists are celebrating the 10th anniversary of Everything That Remains. It's the groundbreaking book that started this entire movement before Netflix, before the podcast, before all of the social media, TikTok, and all of that other stuff. We started the minimalists.com, and that led to our first book, Minimalism, and then the second book, Everything That Remains, and it's the 10-year anniversary this year. We're headed to 7 cities all across California: Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Orange County, Ventura, Palm Springs, and Fresno. We're doing it in indie bookstores only. This is a return to form for us in many ways. This is the Minimalists' 11th tour, and however, it is our first free tour since 2015. And so you can get your tickets for this tour. They're free over at theminimalists.com/tour. Now, they are limited, so I say get them quickly, not because I'm trying to give you exclusivity or scarcity here, but just to understand that, you know what, we're not going to be able to accommodate everyone. And so all you have to do is RSVP, get a free ticket, theminimalists.com/tour. You can come to multiple events if you'd like. Each event is going to be different. TK is going to do a talk, and Ryan and I will look at the book that we have. We'll do some readings. We'll answer your questions. Of course, we'll dole out hugs. Malabama will be there. Danny, Professor Sean will be there. What are you looking forward to, TK?
Well, I've gone on tour with you guys many times, but I have never done the bookshop stop. And this is your first free tour since 2015, but this will be my first, period. And you guys will be hitting the road again, doing something that you haven't done in a while. I'll be doing this for the first time. So there's a novelty effect for me as well. I'm excited to experience you guys and our community in this type of context. And I love books, so get me around some bookstores.
This is one of my favorite things, especially these indie shops. And Malabama did such a great job booking these tour stops. Usually we use WME to book our big tours. We're doing theaters or we're doing comedy clubs sometimes. This is different from that. These are indie bookstores, which are like some of my favorite places on earth. You're supporting a local business, and of course, you're supporting indie authors, which is what the Minimalists are. And we have these really meaningful experiences. This is when we started doing the hugs and it became a regular part of what we did. Is I remember going to our first tour stop, and at the end of it, we were in St. Petersburg, Florida, and we were done. Ryan and I were like, there were 8 people there. I guess we just hugged these 8 people. And from that moment, we became the huggers. And it was then solidified or crystallized in our first Netflix documentary. And so if you want to join us, we're doing 7 cities all over California, and there'll be people from all over the world there. We have people who come in from Germany, or people who come in from Canada, Mexico, Denver, all over the world. People coming from Europe and Asia. They'll come to these tour stops. You're welcome to join us, theminimalists.com/tour for your free tickets. Get them while you can. Friday afternoon, Minimalist Zoom, the first Friday of every month. We host a Zoom call for our lovely, lovely patrons over at patreon.com/theminimalists. And Malabama's over there in the chat. She's collecting your questions for the ones we can't get to on screen. One of my favorite things we do. We get to interact with you face-to-face on Zoom once a month. It looks like we have a question today. This one is from Natalia.
What is your opinion on doing those buy nothing challenges for a month or even a year? I am thinking of trying it in addition to my current decluttering process.
Well, TK, a brand new year just started. And so people are often thinking about New Year's resolutions. What can I change in my life? Many people by now, we're a week into the year. They've already given up on the New Year's resolution because they realized like this was maybe someone else's resolution for me, but not actually my resolution. I did this early on. We first started the Minimalists about 2 weeks into the minimalists.com. I didn't have a whole lot to write about. I already wrote about my whole simplifying journey. What am I going to do? You know what? I'm going to try to buy nothing this year. This was 2011, and I failed tremendously at that, but it was a beautiful failure, and I learned a whole lot of lessons about it. Because here's the truth. The purpose of an action is just as important as the action itself. So why are you doing it? Do you have a New Year's resolution because everyone told you should have a New Year's resolution? Or do you have a goal about the month of January, the month of February? Do you have a sales goal that someone else handed to you? Okay, why are you doing it? And if you just were handed something that you're supposed to do, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to stick to. But if you know why you don't want to buy anything, at least for a period of time, it's kind of like if you're on a boat that's taking on water, you probably want to patch the holes before you fix the leak, right? You can fix the leak and, well, actually, I take that back. Before you repair the entire boat, because what's going to happen here is if you have a boat full of water that is sinking, it's not going to matter if you're just repairing the boat while it's underwater at the bottom of the sea, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are. When we first start simplifying our lives, what happens? We're underwater. We're overstuffed with stuff, overindulged for many years, and now we're drowning in stuff. Well, I need to fix that leak. And the leak is more stuff coming in. Yes, I need to get rid of these excess things in my home. But maybe I need to address this leak first. And that leak is like the Amazon one-click shopping. Oh, the influencer or the advertiser told me I need to buy this thing, so I bring it into my home. Before I know it, yes, I'm getting rid of a bunch of things, but I'm bringing just as many things in. No wonder it's so difficult to declutter.
That's right. I like 30-day experiments, by the way. They have played a very positive and pivotal role in my life because, number one, 30 days is just a great amount of time. You can do just about anything for 30 days. And if you get to day 8 or day 17 and you're like, I don't think this is working for me, you can still finish it out and get the satisfaction of knowing that you followed through and you gave this process a fair chance to reveal itself to you. And then you can choose to move on to something else and you can reflect on what you learned and take the best of what you've learned with you. Or if you really like the process, you can just commit for 30 days, but you can commit for another 30 days and you can keep doing that without having the pressure that typically comes with turning something into a lifestyle that you're promising to the universe you're going to do forever. From now on, I'm just going to do this thing indefinitely, forever. There's no point at which I have thought about stopping. And then when we get tired of it and we want to stop, we feel this sense of contradiction. We feel like we're giving up. We feel like we're flaking. And so I love saying, I'm going to do this for 30 days because you've given yourself an out, but you've also given yourself a commitment that's going to take some effort to follow through. And I think you can do anything experimental that allows you to explore a new way of being for 30 days. So I've done things like I'm going to write a blog post every day for 30 days, or I'm going to take a walk every day for 30 days, or I'm going to listen to a different podcast every day for 30 days. I'm going to listen to a different song each day that I've never heard before, not as part of the background, but sit down and listen to it every day for 30 days. And just any kind of experiment you can conduct that allows you to explore something like that, it brings a lot of joy, especially when you mix it up. So I like your 30-day project proposal. And like Josh says, as long as it's yours and you're doing it for you, go for it. Sounds fun.
We also recorded an entire episode about this, a Buy Nothing episode. It was episode 405. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. We got a bunch more questions, but first, Alabama, what do you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hello, Minimalists. My name is Hannah from Stillwater, Oklahoma. 29 years old. Not a Patreon subscriber because I'm not yet debt-free, but we'll get there. I've been a fan of yours for about 7 years now. And I just want to say that after a long time of minimizing and letting things go and not clinging, I, a year ago, decided to completely get rid of all social media. It was something I'd tried in small little bouts before that, but decided to finally give it a full go. And I celebrated with my husband yesterday a full year without social media. And we celebrated by drinking a little bit too much wine and working on a cross-stitch project. So thank you for all of the wonderful wisdom and support and encouragement that you give all of us. Thanks.
All right, y'all. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 425 with Marcus Collins, which includes answers to a bunch more questions. Questions like, how does corporate marketing lower a person's self-esteem? Especially we're talking about teenage girls and how they're influenced by all of these influencers today. What is advertising's role in so-called cancel culture? And what are 8 marketing maxims that will actually improve your life? Plus, a million more questions and simple living segments, including a minimalist home tour from one of our listeners over on the Minimalists private podcast. Visit patreon.com/theminimalist or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You also get access to all of our archives all the way back to episode 001. By the way, Patreon is now offering free trials. So if you'd like to test drive our private podcast, you can join for 7 days for free. Big thanks to Marcus Collins for joining us today. You can check out his book. It is called For the Culture, and you can follow him on social media or check out his website. We'll put links to all of that in the show notes. That is our minimal episode for today. If you leave here with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.